to get you on a slow boat to China, to myself alone.
So I met Jack and Sonia in August of 1997. The three of us were visiting our mutual friend Sylvia at her house in Woodstock during the same weekend. A bunch of us were sitting outside on the deck one afternoon. The talk turned to movies, and Jack, it was obvious, had seen a lot of them. Eric Romer came up in conversation. He'd recently come out with a movie, and I haven't checked this, but I think it was probably Pauline at the Beach. Jack said that watching a Romer film was like watching paint dry. I did not agree, so we began to argue. And we argued, and we argued. And although we disagreed about the particulars, I knew I had met a match, someone who cared about films as much as I did. Not just seeing them, but talking about them and figuring out where they fit in the pantheon. And Sonia and Jack gave me a ride back to New York, and we made a plan to go to the movies, and the rest is history. We saw many movies together over the years. I did the math and figured out it was probably about 100 films. We often went as a threesome, sometimes with Sylvia if she was in town, depending upon what the film was and whether Sonia was busy. Sometimes it was just me and Jack, sometimes it was just me and Sonia, sometimes it was the three of us. My memories of many, many films and my feelings about those films are completely entwined with who I saw them with and thinking about the conversation that we had. And a lot of these films are really important to me. We probably saw about 100 movies together. We did a lot of other things, Sonia and Jack and I. We went to Yankees games and Mets games. We watched the Academy Awards together. We watched the World Series together. But it always came back to movies. And when Jack stopped going to see movies in movie theaters, I knew he was not well. He was a no-nonsense guy. He hated the words based on a true story. This totally got him going because he felt that it was an excuse to fabricate. And he always wanted to know. He was like a real reporter when it came to movies. What really happened? He had no-nonsense type questions like, how big were the penguins in March of the Penguins? And what other wildlife lived in that climate? I don't know if you remember this, but a bird shows up at the end of the film, and it's completely unremarked upon by the Morgan Freeman God-type narrator. And he was like, WTF? Like, what was that about? What else was going on that we weren't told about? For years, Jack sent me a weekly email telling me about every film he had seen over the last week with a brief summary of his opinion. In the years before he retired, in the years after he retired, he saw about 5 movies a week. It could be difficult to find films to see with him since he had often seen everything that I was interested in or even remotely interested in before we could get around to making a plan. I never knew if he sent those emails to other people as well, but they were so predictable that when I would realize sometimes late in the week that I hadn't received an email from him, I knew that something might be wrong and I should call or email to find out what was going on. Let's see. Jack was a realist and he had a finely tuned bullshit detector. Sometimes that made him seem like a cynic, but I knew he cared deeply about the world and about other people. He cried at movies and described himself as a softie, and he was. I remember once Sylvia and Sonia and Jack and I were eating at a restaurant in Woodstock. I'm evidently the only person that remembers this. We were eating out at this restaurant, and a fight broke out between the owner of the restaurant, it was an Indian restaurant near Woodstock, and the waitress. And there was screaming and shouting, and it was starting to escalate. It was very bad. I guess she was a new employee, but they were literally screaming from one end of the restaurant over us. It was the most unprofessional thing, and it was getting worse. And Jack intervened in a very thoughtful way to try to de-escalate. And this was really interesting to me, because when you just do one thing with someone, go to the movies and go out to eat, there are dimensions of their character that you might not see. But I think this was a very telling moment. He basically stepped in to kind of say, come on everyone, don't lose your heads, it's not a big deal. And the owner of the restaurant easily could have turned on him and didn't. But I think he was worried about the waitress. She was a younger woman, and it was a job she hadn't had for a long time. And I think it resonated with me because I always felt like I was younger than he was, that he was a little bit protective of me as well. Jack once told me a story, the point of which was that some people are so competitive that they're competitive about not being competitive. They're trying to prove how uncompetitive they are. And I just have to say that a person who understands this concept is someone I'm really lucky to have known in my life.
For Jack, whom I did not know very well at all, and for Sonia, with whom I worked for more than 20 years at Publishers Weekly, where she served as a copy editor par excellence, which should be in italic, orange free, unless you can find it in Webster's Fifth, comma. I have 3 words, one of which is a contraction. I'm sure Jack would appreciate this. Let's go, Mets.